is John 11, the raising of Lazarus, and that's what we're gonna start with. We're gonna start with that passage, the John 11 passage. So John 11 verses 17 through 27, and then 38 through 53. Pretty much the entire chapter 11 is the entire story is about the raising of Lazarus, but that's a pretty long chapter to read, so we broke it up a little bit. So we're going to start reading at verse 17, and we're going to read through verse 27, and then we might read some more just because we can in Bible study, right? All right, so before we actually read starting at verse 17, when you start at the very beginning of the chapter, Jesus gets word that a man by the name of Lazarus is sick. And he lives at Bethany, and Mary and Martha have sent word to Jesus about his sickness. And of course, they're hoping that Jesus will do what? Come and heal him. Well, Jesus hears about it, and he says, well, we're not going to go yet. He's sleeping, And disciples don't really get all of this. They think, well, if he's sleeping, well, why go? Well, Jesus means he's going to die, right? And they really don't want him to go towards Jerusalem at this point. If you get down to verse 14, it says, Jesus told them very plainly, right? He's kind of been beating around the bush. He goes, Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let's go to him. So you already get the impression that Jesus is going to do what? Raise him. Yeah. And in John's Gospel, the first 11 chapters, there are 7 signs that Jesus does. They're called miraculous signs in our English translations, but they're just signs. There's 7 of them. And the very first one is in John 2, where Jesus changes water to wine, right? This was the first of the miraculous signs he did, and the disciples began to put their faith in him. And that's the purpose of all these 7 signs. We're not going to go and look at all 7 of them. We'll do that at another study time, an all-day workshop type of a thing. But this is the last of those signs, okay? And it's the big one, the raising of Lazarus. All right, so let's start at verse 17. Oh, and before we actually get there, look at verse 16 then, right? But Thomas, called Didymus, you remember what Didymus means? Twin. Yeah, Didymus means twin. That's kind of Jesus' nickname for him. We don't know for sure, 100% sure why they called him Didymus or twin, but there is a strong tradition that he kind of looked like Jesus. And so Jesus kind of gave him that nickname, hey, twin. It could be, we don't know that for sure, but it's an interesting concept. Then Thomas, called Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go that we may die with him. Okay? Because they're going to Jerusalem, and they think that there's going to be some kind of a big revolutionary moment, and if Jesus is going to battle, they're going to battle too, and they're ready to die with him. All right. Now, we go to verse 17. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Mary and Martha to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him. But Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died, but I know that even now God will give whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Then Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he dies. So whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she told him. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world. Now we're going to keep reading after we do a few questions. On Sunday, we're going to skip down to verse 38. Okay, but Any thoughts or questions on these first 10 verses, 17 through 27? Anything going through your mind? Anything you're wondering about?
Well, I kind of thought this is the whole package here of resurrection, and at the last days, we'll all be raised, on set.
Yeah, that's what Martha is talking about is the resurrection day, right? And the concept was, hey, when the Messiah comes, there will be a final day. This is part of the Hebrew thought from the Old Testament, where God will raise us and restore the world. And that's what she's referring to. Well, Jesus has something more in mind, doesn't he? Yeah. He is saying that resurrection day kind of jumps into the present. Because he's going to start that resurrection day with his own resurrection. Yeah.
I had a thought.
Yeah.
On 16,
Okay.
before that it said, when they said, let us go
Yeah.
and to die with him.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I was thinking, they know, or they were told that he would raise, die. And
3
come
times
back.
he's told them
He told
very
them that.
explicitly. Yeah.
And I think, in my head, I wonder if they're talking about dying and then the resurrection. They want to be in the, believe in him that he will rise again.
Yeah. Except that the rest of the story, none of them believe that.
They don't.
Yeah. They have no concept of what he means by that. Every time he tells them that story, the teaching
they don't get
in
it.
Matthew, Mark, and Luke, every time they don't get it. Yeah. When he first tells them, what did Peter do? That will never happen to you. You'll never do that. Yeah. Jesus says, Satan, get behind me. Right?
Yeah.
You're thinking like men, not like God. Yeah. And the next time he teaches them, they're bickering about who was the most important one of them.
Right.
The next time he tells them, James and John and their mom come up and ask Jesus for a favor. Can we sit at your right, at your left when you're in the kingdom? Yeah.
Well, you mentioned, they thought it was going to be a revolution.
I think that's what they're looking for.
That's what
Yeah.
they
So
think.
when they were in the garden and they grabbed Jesus, Peter
Had a sword.
Yep.
They had their swords. They were ready for battle. Yep. All right. Any other thoughts or questions before we point out a couple things and then we move on?
Martha had great faith.
Yeah.
I mean,
Why would you say that?
well, because she knows that everyone will rise again.
Yeah.
At the final
So that's her
time.
believing.
Which is ours too.
Yeah.
And then Jesus went over and above and
Yeah.
raised Lazarus. Lazarus.
So she does believe in this resurrection, except she's saying, I'd like it to happen now. Right?
Oh,
If only, that was her first complaint, right? Jesus, in verse 21, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died.
I'm thinking she thinks that he could have healed Lazarus.
And I think she's still thinking he can do something. God will do whatever you ask.
But she also realizes on the final day he will.
There will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is that hope. She wants that final day to happen now, though. No.
was it in that era of family without a father, husband, or brothers? The women would have a hard time making a living.
Yeah, it could be. We're not quite sure if they don't have husbands or not. They could. We don't know. It doesn't say. It doesn't say that they're single, but this only refers to them and their brother, doesn't it? It never mentions any husbands. Yeah. This is the same Mary and Martha. What did Jesus stop one time? And in Luke 10, the story is when he stops at their home, they welcome him in. And what's the story that's going on there? What's Mary and Martha doing in that story? Do you remember?
Making a meal for her.
Who's doing that?
Martha's got it.
Martha's running around like a chicken cut off, and she's doing all this, getting pulled in all these directions, getting things ready. What's Mary doing?
Sitting there, Jesus.
And doing nothing. Well, except for listening, choosing the one thing needed. She's listening to the master teach.
Martha has getting ready for feeding Jesus and the disciples.
Could be.
It's not just one person.
Well, it doesn't say that, but
Yeah.
where we can assume that others are present. Yeah, yeah. So look at this story. Mary and Martha are both there. In verse 20, when they hear Jesus is coming, what's the different reaction between the two sisters?
Well, Martha went to meet him.
Yeah,
Mary stayed at
Mary
home.
stays home. Kind of interesting. Martha, the go-getter, moving around doing this, getting pulled in so many directions on Jesus' first visit. She's the one that rushes out to him, right? And Mary does what? Sits at home. Seems like Mary is a little more, I think Jesus has got this. Whoop, bless you. You need a Kleenex? You need a Kleenex? You got some, okay.
Got prepared.
All right, that's good. All right, so we've got these two women with the different perspectives, okay? And then Martha rushes out, and Jesus assures her he's going to rise again, right? I believe in the resurrection, because I believe in that too. And then Jesus speaks the powerful words of 27 or 25. This is, we said that how many signs were there in John's gospel?
7.
7. And there are also 7 I am statements in John's gospel. This is one of them. I am the resurrection and the life. Now, some think that I am statement is referring to what?
That's
I
something.
am.
God's name.
God's name.
Yeah, I am. The Moses in the burning bush. Who do you say that I am? Or who should I say that your name is? I am. Well, the Greek is actually called, when Jesus says the I am statements, he is saying I, ego, eimi. That's the Greek, that's the phrase that he uses. Ego, eimi. Not Lego, my ego, but ego, eimi, which means I myself. Okay? So it's not really an I am statement in Greek. It's more like a I am and there is no other. That's kind of what the phrase is with all the I am statements. I am the bread of life, there is no other. I am the light of the world, there is no other. I am the, oh my goodness. That can happen. I get sneezing fits too.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, don't be sorry at all.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, would you, demerits right there. So I am the resurrection and the life, there is no other. That's what Jesus is kind of saying. And then the phrase, he who believes in me will live even though he dies. So you still will what?
You just sort of
You're going to still physically die. But whoever believes in me will never die. Right? And then the question, do you believe this? And her response, yes, I believe you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world. Which is exactly what John has been pointing towards everybody doing with the coming of Jesus. That when you, so keep your finger here, skip over to John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31. It's, John 20 is the resurrection account, right? When Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene, and then he appears to the disciples in the upper room. And then a week later, finally appears when Thomas is there that time. But if you look at the last 2 verses, it says, Jesus did many other miraculous signs. These, in the presence of his disciples, were not recorded in this book. 7 of them were recorded in this book. But he did a lot of others that weren't here. And here's why. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, which is exactly what, for the first time, somebody actually believes in Jesus. And who is it? Martha. I believe you're the Christ, the Son of God. And that by believing, you'll have life in his name. Huge themes in John's Gospel. The believing, having life in his name. Okay? And the signs. So this is the last of those signs, and Martha is ready to declare, I believe you're the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into this world.
Not
Yeah.
a question, but
Oh,
it
fine.
doesn't really say she believes Christ, but they still don't all know what his purpose is.
Right. Yeah.
And the servant king, not
Yeah.
a revolutionary conquering king.
She's not asking for revolution or conquering, but you're right. Yeah. Where are they at? Well, we're going to trace out a little bit more of the story that's going to kind of give where other people are thinking about that. Now, it doesn't say that she has this revolutionary hopes, because she's always focused on the restoration of the world, resurrection, and not political overthrowing. Yeah. So maybe she really does get it, where none of them other ones do. Yeah. At this point, at least. All right. So verse 28. After she said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, and is asking for you. Well, when Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. So now finally Mary is going out there too. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Which is exactly what who said? Same thing that Martha said, right? When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. What does that tell you about Jesus?
He has compassion.
He has more of his compassion, doesn't he? Yeah, he's weeping because she's weeping. And those who are with her are weeping. And he's deeply moved and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" Jesus asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. And Jesus wept. Shortest verse in the Bible in English. 2 verses, right? Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? All right. Before we go to verse 38, anything in there from those 10 verses running through your mind, or questions that you have?
Well, I always think of, you don't know how old he was. Jesus is Mary's husband, Joseph. Apparently he passed already ahead of this. So Jesus let him go to his.
Okay, yeah. Joseph, the carpenter, he's dead. Yeah, most likely. Okay. Yeah. Nothing.
But
Jesus.
life goes on. We're all going to reach that time.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus has encountered death before, right? Yeah. And we know of 2 other resurrection accounts before this. We know that when Jesus is asked by Jairus, the synagogue leader, to come heal his little girl, by the time Jesus gets there, she's already dead, right? And they say, "Why bother him? Jesus says, no, she's sleeping," and they laugh at him. And then he takes just Peter, James, and John, and the mom and dad, and says, "Talithu koum," and the little girl does what? Gets up. Rise up, little girl. And she does. Then the other account is in Luke 7, when Jesus is coming to a village called Nain, not far from Nazareth. As Jesus and his group are coming towards the village, there is a procession coming out of the village of a widow whose only son had died. And the procession is a funeral procession. So there's the hopelessness of women right there, John. She's a widow, her husband's dead, now her only son is dead, right? And so she's hopeless without a prayer. Jesus is coming in, and they both kind of meet at the edge of the village. And Jesus reaches out and touches the dead man and raises him from the dead and gives him back to the mother. Those are the only 2 resurrection accounts we have. Could there be more? Yeah, could be. Those are the 2 that we have, right? But Jesus most likely has encountered death in other places, and not always raised people from the dead when he saw them. Okay.
How old do you think Lazarus, Jesus was in his, 30 by that time?
Jesus
29?
is 33.
So Lazarus was probably quite young too, because they were all friends.
Could be, yeah. We don't know
Mary
for
and
sure.
Martha.
Yeah.
So it was,
They seem to be a prominent family,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
And maybe it was an untimely death.
Yeah, it seems like it was. Yeah. Okay. Anything else before we move on? Jesus has this enormous compassion. Jesus cries as well. All right. So we get to verse 38. Jesus, once more deeply moved, this is the third time the description of him being deeply moved in this brief encounter, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, Jesus said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there's already a bad odor, for it has been 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believed you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and he said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. So this is the final sign, right? And all the signs have been so that people will have faith, right? They'll know and see the glory of God. When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Okay. Stop again. Any thoughts or questions you got running through your minds, or anything there that stood out to you want to comment on?
Well, it's like he conferred with God the Father. His Father, I think you definitely have heard me.
Yeah. So there is an image of Jesus calling on God as Father, right? Which is a new trend set by Jesus, because in the Old Testament, throughout the entire Old Testament, 66 books, God is referred to as a Father just 7 times. And never addressed as Father, just like God is like a Father, but nobody is saying, oh, our Father. God, talking to God as a Father. Yeah, just, he's like a Father. Only 7 times. But Jesus, when he teaches us to pray, says you can say, our Father, call him God as Father, because that's what he's been doing. Okay. What other kind of thoughts or questions or comments you got?
I'm thinking if Lazarus was dead for 4 days, there would have been some decomposing already, so Jesus probably fixed that as well.
Right? The resurrection fixed that too, didn't it? It restored it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's not coming out with, decayed flesh.
Oh.
Right. Yeah. And that's the concern that Martha has, right? The smell's already there. That's the burial. In Jewish burials at this time, you bury the day of death, right? I think Orthodox Jews still want burials to be done the day of death. So you bury the day of death in a tomb, and the tomb is sealed to keep the odor out, right? To keep the odor in. And basically, you just wait till the body's decayed. Then you go and you gather the bones, and you put it in a box, like an urn, right?
Ossuary.
An ossuary is what it's called, yeah. And then the ossuaries are stacked in mausoleum cemeteries. That's kind of Jewish burial systems, yeah.
Well, God or Jesus must have closed Lazarus' mind, because he doesn't say, it doesn't say, we don't remember anything what happened after he died.
Right. Yeah.
We all would be interested to know that.
Right? We want to know that, not a near-death experience, but a 4-day death experience and came back. What happened? Yeah.
What did you see?
Right, right. But nothing like that. And when Jesus finally, after the prayer, does the miracle, it's just with 3 words. Lazarus, come out. I remember reading, and I can't remember the exact setting of it, but it was in some kind of a lecture setting where a man was defending the faith. I think it was in the Soviet Union. And somebody questioned him about this story about the resurrection of Lazarus. Well, it was all, the guy suggests maybe it was all just pre-set up, where Lazarus was just kind of hiding in the tomb to fake everybody out. Because Jesus had to call his name so that Lazarus knew, okay, he didn't really dead, he's just kind of hiding out. And so when he hears his name, well, then he'll come out. And the man who was defending the faith, said, oh, there was a reason why Jesus had to call his name specifically, and it was not because he was a signal to let a live man let him come out. It's just that if Jesus wouldn't have said his name and just said, come out, then everybody would have been raised, and they all would have come out. Yeah, maybe so. That's the power of Jesus' words, right? Lazarus, come out. And it's the restoration. Miraculous, right? No body decayed. Linen cloths, the death clothes on him. So Jesus says, let him go. Get the death cloths over him. He's alive now. You were good.
How human this is a quote here. I knew you always hear me. That's such a human thing to say to him. You know, we know it.
Yeah. I know you always hear me.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah.
I mean,
what a confidence that he has in God. Yeah, his Father. I know you always hear me. But I'm saying it out loud now so that those who are around me are going to know you sent me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's by the way, read through John sometime and ask how many, and note how many times it says Jesus was sent, or Jesus says I was sent. And you would, by the end of it, you would say, who is Jesus? Well, he's the sent one. That's who he is. He's the sent one. Yeah. Which in Greek is apostol. Apostle. We get apostle, right? The apostolic. Apostles mean sent ones. Jesus is the sent one. And when we say I believe in the apostolic church, what we're saying is we believe in the churches that is being sent. Being sent into the world to bear his life.
You mentioned about multiple people in that story. On Good Friday, when Jesus died, there were big earthquakes and everything, and tombs were open and people were raised.
They were, right? And what happened to those people? That's another, what happened to those people? They went back to normal life, but you know, how weird would that be for everybody? Yeah.
They had to die again.
They did have to die again. All right, so let's finish the story off in chapter 11. All the way through verse 53. Are you ready? Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did put their faith in Jesus. That was why he did the sign, right? But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus has done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. What are we accomplishing? They asked. Here is the man performing many miraculous signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And then the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than the whole nation perish. He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. And not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. And what's interesting is, when you read through the rest of it, they also made plots to take on the life of Lazarus. They made a plot to take his life again as well. They wanted to get away with the evidence. All right, so anything on those verses 45 through 53 that you're wondering about?
Well, it sounds like they're plotting, but they think they're trying to make it look like Jesus is going to die for the Jewish nation. And it's a good thing, but actually it's just they're taking it themselves.
Exactly.
They want to stay in power.
Yeah. Their concern is the temple business, not losing their power, not losing their prestige. Because if Rome gets an inkling of trouble happening and brewing, and people putting their faith in one who says he's the Messiah, well, the Romans don't take good, rivals to Caesar are not well received, right? Ones who call themselves kings. And so, yeah, they're worried about themselves. And it's interesting, John's interpretation of it, when he says it's better for one man to die than the whole nation, died. That is literally what Jesus does. Right? He's prophesying, doesn't know it though. It's ironic, right? That's kind of the irony. That's kind of a motif in John's gospel as well. Is there this irony? He is saying, for his own sake, his own political gain, but he's saying the truth of the gospel, that one man's going to die so the rest of us don't have to die.
But that's how they're justifying.
That's how they're justifying it, right? So, which makes it ironic, right? That brings the irony out of it, yeah. And so from that moment on, they begin to plot to kill him. And they've already, the Pharisees had already begun that even before that. Now they got the chief priests involved in it as well. All right, anybody else? Any questions on John 11? Okay. So that's the hope, that death doesn't get the last word, because Jesus gets the last word. I am the resurrection and the life. All right, so we move to chapter 12. The first 11 verses is Jesus getting anointed at the family in the house of Lazarus and Mary, and Martha and Mary anoints him, preparing his body for burial. Again, in a way that they fully don't understand. Maybe Mary does, maybe Martha does, but the rest of them don't, right? Because they try to reject it because that money could have been used for the poor. She says, you know, she's preparing me for my burial. You'll always have the poor with you. All right? But then we get down to the Palm Sunday reading, verse 12. Are you there? All right. So the next day, the great crowd that had come for the feast heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took palm branches and they went out to meet him, shouting, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel. Jesus found a young donkey and sat upon it, as it is written, Do not be afraid, O daughter of Zion. See, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt. At first his disciples did not understand all this. Only after Jesus was glorified did they realize that these things had been written about him, and that they had done these things to him. Now, the crowd that was with them when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to spread the word. Many people, because they had heard that he had given this miraculous sign, went out to meet him. And so the Pharisees said to one another, See, this is getting us nowhere. Look how the whole world is going after him. All right. Familiar story. Yearly observance of Palm Sunday. Anything you got in there that you got comments on or questions about?
In verse 16,
Mm-hmm.
and for disciples, they just don't, the disciples did not understand all this.
Yeah. And that's
only after Jesus was raised.
Yeah, after he was glorified. And the glorification of Jesus actually happens, the signal will happen in chapter 12 and 13, where Jesus will, when the Greeks come and ask to see Jesus, Jesus will say, now the time has come for me to be glorified. And the way that Jesus will be glorified is he's lifted on a tree. That's where he's glorified. When he gets lifted on the tree, which means his crucifixion. That's his glory. And this kind of mirrors even back to chapter 2, right? So after Jesus does the first miraculous sign, water to wine, chapter 2 also contains the story of Jesus cleansing the temple. Now, some people will say Jesus did that twice. He did it early in his ministry in John 2, and then he does it the week of Holy Week, the day after Palm Sunday.
With the money changers?
With the money, yeah. Well, he does it in John 2, and then he does it. But I would say, no, remember, John's not worried about chronology. John is not worried about chronology at all. I don't think Jesus would have gotten away with disrupting the temple twice. He got away with it once, and then they crucified him. So why does John put that account at the beginning in 2? Well, remember when John tells the story of Jesus doing the cleansing of the temple, he says, and I could destroy this temple and build it in 3 days. Okay? Well, John puts this cryptic note like this one. He goes, it wasn't until after he was glorified, after the resurrection, that we realized he wasn't talking about the building. He was talking about his own body. Jesus is the temple now. He's replaced the temple. Because the temple in the Old Testament was signified for the presence of who in their midst?
God.
The Lord God. Yeah. The Lord God resided in there. That's what made it holy and sacred. Well, Jesus now is where the glory of God resides, right? In his own person. The Word became flesh and tabernacled himself among us, and we have seen his glory, full of grace and truth. So that's kind of John's reason for putting that story there. And so here again, John has that little kind of whispering footnote in verse 16. We didn't know what was going on until after he was glorified. Then we realized that everything that had been written about him, Old Testament, and that we had done to him, it was all the pieces were coming together. Because at first, when they're seeing Jesus coming into Jerusalem, riding on the donkey, what are the crowds shouting?
Hosanna.
Hosanna. What does that mean?
Praise.
It means save us. No, it means actually save us. Hosanna means save us. Save us now. That's what Hosanna means. Save us now. And then, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel. You think they're thinking, yay, he's going to go to the cross and die, when they're yelling, blessed is the King of Israel. They're probably thinking what?
Just going to be the king.
He's going to be our king. Yay, he's going to get rid of Romans. We're going to raise an army. Yay, blessed is this guy. Well, they don't know what they're saying, right? They are praising him as king. They're anticipating kingship, but not the kind of kingship Jesus is coming to deliver. And then they make reference to the Old Testament passage from Zechariah 9. Do not be afraid, O daughter of Zion. See, your king comes seated on the colt of a donkey. And at first, the disciples didn't want to get the. They're probably still in the mind of revolution, raising, Mary and Martha probably are the only two who don't have that in mind, at least from this account. And the woman at the well, from John 4, she doesn't have any hope for that either. She knows Jesus is the Messiah too. Yeah. The women get it, dudes don't. Nothing all that different today.
It makes mention the crowd that was following, and most of them seemed to had seen when Lazarus was raised up too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here's a person that has really got the power,
Yeah,
I can visualize people thinking that.
Sure, God's with him. He's got this power. Yeah, oh sure. Yeah.
But then they changed their tune.
When they asked him to be crucified. So that's interesting that you say that. A theory on that one, how did they turn so quickly from Sunday to Friday? Well, we've probably got two different crowds. Because remember, this is the week of what? What festival? Passover. So all the people from the country are gathering there. So you've got the faithful who are, praising Jesus, worshiping Jesus, but who's out to plot to get Jesus?
Scribes,
Pharisees, the temple guys, the Sanhedrin guys, right? The political elite and all those people. So when Jesus gets arrested, when is he arrested? Middle of the night, Thursday night. And he gets hauled away to whose house for trial? Caiaphas, the one that's mentioned here, right? And Caiaphas has this trial with the Sanhedrin in the middle of the night, which is totally against the what? Against the rules and the laws of Judaism. No trials at night. But when it's convenient and necessary, you make exceptions, right? And so, do you think anybody in the crowds who were there on Sunday, knowing who Jesus was, saying who Jesus was, do you think any of them were even aware that Jesus had been arrested? No, there was no Fox News alert. Yeah. There was no Fox News cable alert saying Messiah has been arrested. Nobody knows, except for the scribes, the Pharisees, and the people that are hooked up with them. Yeah. And so when they finally get him, because they can't put him to death on their own, they got to take him to Pilate, right? That's early in the morning. People aren't aware of anything going on yet.
So they're sneaking around, right?
They are. And so who? The crowds that are being persuaded to call for being crucified and give us Barabbas, they're the insider people. They're the ones who know. It's not the crowds who were there on Palm Sunday. It's the crowds of the insiders who are getting him crucified. They're the ones doing it. So you got two different crowds.
Well, it does say in one of the Gospels that they sent instigators into the crowd.
Right. Yeah. And that's the main part of the crowd. That they're it. Yeah. Because the nobody knows that he's been arrested except for them, and they're and the people involved with the temple. It's a big number. You've got all the priests and the Sanhedrin, the scribe. That's a big group of people, and everything that their whole livelihood depends upon the security of the temple. So they're doing everything they can to get rid of the one guy who they think is the problem with it. All right. Anybody got any other thoughts or questions or comments on the John Palm Sunday reading? Cool. All right. Last one. Romans chapter 5. And because of my vacation, this should have been the readings for last week, but I made it for this week so I can finish my little 5-part sermon series on our speed skater, Johnny Pilgrim, and the last part of the message of the story is how hope does not disappoint, which is from the resurrection of Lazarus story, and then here from Romans chapter 5. So we'll have Palm Sunday music and Palm Sunday readings. Our focus of our sermon won't really be a Palm Sunday sermon. But we will use this Romans passage as well. Yeah, got it? What does the first word of the ESV have? Oh, good. We do here as well. Therefore, which always means what? It's a little summary of just what got written. So, chapter 4, Paul has made the transition at the end of chapter 3 about how nobody is saved by what you do, but you are justified before God freely by grace through Jesus, who became the atoning sacrifice for our sins. That's the chapter 3. And then chapter 4 is all about, and this is consistent with the way God's always operated, and he tells us the story of Abraham. Abraham is saved not by what he does, but by what he believes, the faith that he has in who God is and who God says he is. And so he's just gone back to the whole thing about you're not saved by what you do, you're saved by who you trust and who you believe. And what does God do for you? Do you trust and believe in that? And that's all the preceding teaching before we get to chapter 5. Therefore, because you got that, you've got peace, hope, and joy. And here's how he writes it. Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. What does it mean to have peace with God?
Understanding that your sins are forgiven.
Yeah. God's good with us. We're friends.
Yeah.
We've been reconciled. We're friends with God again. Right? Now, through whom we have gained access by faith into his grace in which we now stand. So we got a right standing before God through our faith in his grace, not by what we do. We can be in God's presence and not be afraid because of what Jesus has done for us, not by what we do. And then he goes, and we rejoice in the, and there's a big word, in the hope of the glory of God. What is hope? In our English version, when we say hope something, what do we usually mean by that? I hope I win the lottery. I hope the Packers win the Super Bowl.
It's something you hope for, but you don't know what
It's a
Yeah.
wish. It's more of a wish. Yeah. But we don't know.
It's a hard word to.
Yeah, it's in English we use it more like wish. That is not the Greek idea of the word hope at all. Hope is an expectation. It is an expectation of a certain outcome. Period. And so what Paul is saying, we've got a hope of the glory of God. We know God is going to restore all things and make it right. We don't wish for that. We just know it. We hope it. We expect that God's going to do that.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a verse that says hope is something of things not seen?
Yeah.
Belief. Where is that?
I think it's Hebrews. Let me
You
check.
know, it just.
Yep. No, I know what
comes in
you're
my
saying.
head, and
Yeah, no. Well thought out. Let's go find it. Let's see if I can find it. Now you're making me work.
Yeah.
Come on. I didn't have to work for a couple weeks because you were gone, and now I got to work again. I'm
No.
kidding. It's a great question.
Hebrews?
I think it's in Hebrews, but I got to look. Because
It isn't hope is eternal.
hope is,
Hope is
the book of Hebrews is a great book on hope. My good friend Michael Card wrote a whole album about the hope of the book of Hebrews. Okay, hope. Go to chapter 6 of Hebrews. That's the coffee book of the Bible. Alright. So I'm going to look at verse 13, Hebrews 6. When God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, God swore by himself, saying, I will surely bless you and give you many descendants. And so after waiting patiently, Abraham received what he promised. Men swear by something greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what it is said and puts an end to all arguments. Because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised, he confirmed it with an oath. God did this so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we have fled to take hold of the hope, which offered to us may be greatly encouraged. And we have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. And it enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain. Okay, so that was not exactly the phrase that you're looking for, but I knew it had this idea of the soul anchor, which is the hope anchor or the hope cross. Did you ever hear of that? The hope cross? It's the symbol of an anchor.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, but let's keep looking. I do know there is a phrase like that. I just got to find it. Oh, it's chapter 11. I bet it's chapter 11. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Is that what you were thinking of?
What verse
Chapter
is
11,
that?
verse 1.
Oh, wait. No, faith is the assurance. Yeah. No, faith is the assurance of things hoped for.
And certain
That you
of what
wish
we do
for.
not see. No, it's not wish.
The
Nothing about
conviction of
wish.
things not seen. So we're certain, to rephrase that, how would you say that? I don't know.
I know the verse you're thinking of too, something about the
Some
promise.
things not seen.
Yeah.
Hope is something of things not seen. That's
We're getting
close
closer
enough.
though, aren't we?
Yeah, it's
Okay, let's keep looking.
gotta be. Maybe it is in Hebrews.
All right, we're gonna solve this mystery somewhere, somehow or another.
Yep.
Hope. Well, who hope? Let me see. Hope. Oh my gosh.
There's a lot, right?
Yeah. There's a list.
There is a list, right? Well, we're gonna do our best here.
Well, hope is in you. Hope in you.
Well, we might not
We
crack
might
this
get it,
puzzle.
but, you know, I can look at it.
My guess is had hope, but not the hope that we're looking for.
Some faith, hope, and love. There's life. And in me is there hope for you.
Kind of ends like it in the elements of things not seen. Isn't it? Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm trying to say it.
Hope is, say that again. Hope is something of things not seen.
Yeah, the evidence of things not seen.
Yes. Isn't that crazy?
Okay, I think I found it.
All right.
Romans.
Oh,
Romans 8.
it is Romans. Romans what chapter?
Chapter 8. Verse 24.
You're still in Hebrew?
We're in Romans 8. Yeah. Verse 24. I think verse 24 and 25 are what we're getting at, yeah?
For in this hope we are saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? Yeah.
But if we
is
hope
things-
for what we do not yet have, we wait for it
Yes.
for space.
But if we hope for what we do not see,
Is that what you're getting
yeah,
at?
that's the one.
Okay.
Right.
Which kind of Paul will make reference to in the great love chapter of 1 Corinthians 13. We've got three virtues: faith, hope, and love. And which is the greatest?
Love.
Because when things are all restored, will there be any need for hope anymore?
No,
No.
because we see
There's
it.
nothing more. Yeah.
Yes, and we
Will there
are-
be any need for faith in the
we're
restored?
in hope.
No.
Yeah.
Faith and hope will not be needed in eternity, in the age that is to come. Because there's nothing more to look forward to.
No,
That's-
because we're
that's it.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So this idea of hope is going to come up a little bit here in verse 5 and 6 that we're going to look at. So back to Romans 5 now. Okay, we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. End of verse 2. And then verse 3 is where it gets a little difficult. And not only do we hope for the glory of God and rejoice in that, but we also rejoice in our sufferings. And that word rejoice, does the ESV have boast or rejoice?
Rejoice.
Okay, it can also mean boast, right? But we also boast or rejoice in our sufferings or our afflictions, our troubles. Because we know, now he's not saying that these troubles and afflictions are good, right? But he does say we can rejoice or boast in them because we know this, we're certain of this. Suffering produces perseverance. And I like the word patient endurance. That's what perseverance is. And this is the same word that's used to describe Job. He has perseverance, patient endurance. And that patient endurance, perseverance, verse 4, accomplishes or produces character. Okay. Now, it doesn't have the word, most translations don't have the word produces in it between perseverance and character. Is that what verse 4 has?
Produces.
Oh, it does. It doesn't work. Okay. ESV doesn't. NIV doesn't. The NIV just goes, suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, character, hope. But I like to always stick the word produces in between them. Because it's kind of like a continuum, developing thing. So you got suffering produces patient endurance. Patient endurance, perseverance, produces character. Now that word character literally means tested character. That's the idea behind it, tested character. And Job will use that to describe himself. Hey, I don't know what's going to all happen. I just know through it all, I'm going to be tested, and I'm going to be made like gold. I'm going to be refined through this process, right? I don't know how, but I believe that's what's going to happen. And that's what Paul is getting at here now too. So the suffering that we endure, the afflictions, the troubles, will produce patient endurance. That patient endurance produces character. Sometimes I've seen translations put it as a godly character. Okay? A godly character. And that godly character, that tested character, produces what? Hope. The end of verse 4. It produces hope. And then verse 5, and that hope does not disappoint us. Because God has poured out his love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit whom he has given us. And that's the whole continuum that we're going to try to flesh out on Sunday, is the suffering that we go through, the afflictions and troubles, produces an enduring patience. And that enduring patience produces something that we can't produce on our own, a tested character. And that tested character produces something that we can't have on our own, produces hope. And then Paul's final phrase, hope doesn't disappoint you. Because it's the hope of the glory of God, that in all things and in all ways is going to restore and rebuild. For those he pours his Spirit into their hearts, whom he has given us. And then he gets to verse 6 through 8, and that's kind of where our reading will end on Sunday. You see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. How did Paul just describe us there? Ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous man, though for a good man, somebody might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we're still sinners, Christ died for us. While we're sinners and ungodly, God lays down his life for us in Jesus. That's how he demonstrates his love. Not clean up your act and I'll die for you. God says, no. You can't clean it up, you're powerless. But I'll still love you and die for you. And that's the hope that sustains us, right? In the midst of all of the afflictions and the hardships, especially the afflictions and the hardships of our graves, right? And the graves of those that we love. Is there anything more hopeless than to stand at the edge of a grave and watch your person that you've loved be buried? That's hopeless. Seemingly hopeless. Except for one thing. I am the resurrection and the life. He who lives and believes in me, though he dies, yet shall he live. Whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, I do. So we're going to have a little death, resurrection, and hope finality to the story of Johnny Pilgrim and how hope does not disappoint.
So you would ask if the sisters wives who became have to wait till Sunday.
You do. You do. No spoiler alerts here, Miss Bonnie. Although Linda might get a little bit more because she'll see slides.
She's sworn.
She is sworn to secrecy.
That's right.
She signs. All right. Well, I got nothing more. And I got little ones coming pretty soon. So any thoughts or questions yet?
One thought I had.
Yeah.
Jesus died for it's, people that are just the most terrible person you could think of.
Mm-hmm.
And we're quick to say, well, they deserve their punishment. But Jesus and God don't look at it like that.
Not if they trusted in him. Yeah. And Jesus died for the worst of the worst. Jesus died for mass killers, and doesn't mean that they're saved. If they don't trust and believe in Jesus, they will not be saved, right? And Jesus died for the most kind people in the world. He died for them too. But their kindness isn't going to save them. Yeah. God didn't look at it that way, does he? No. Christ died for all, and does want all to be saved. All right. Cool. We're going to close it with that.